Namaste and welcome, beloved mighty companions.
Namaste, bienvenidos, amados compañeros poderosos.
Welcome to another deep dive with Jesus.
Bienvenidos a otra profunda inmersión con Jesús.
He's sitting right here with us, supervising our every activity here.
Está supervisando todas nuestras actividades aquí.
Thank you, Jesus, for bringing us together again in holiness.
Gracias, Jesús, por reunirnos nuevamente en la santidad.
It really makes you laugh when you listen deeply to what Jesus has to say.
Realmente te ríes cuando escuchas profundamente lo que Jesús tiene que decirte.
So this is an opportunity to look deeply with him at guidance.
Esta es una oportunidad de mirar profundamente con Él qué es la guía.
And the very first thing to know about guidance is that we don't want it. The play of consciousness is to avoid guidance like it's the plague.
Lo primero que tenemos que saber sobre esto es que no queremos la guía. El juego de la conciencia es evadir la guía como plaga.
So it's never that Jesus is not talking to us. It just can't happen. He is talking to us. He says the voice for God speaks to you throughout the day.
No es imposible que Jesús no nos hable. Eso no puede suceder. Porque la voz de Dios te habla durante todo el día.
Jesus does not work part-time.
Jesús no trabaja a medio tiempo.
He's full-time devotion to the atonement.
Él está completamente dedicado 100% a la expiación.
And so if what he started talking to me about is if I can't hear him, that meant I didn't want to.
Lo que me estaba hablando es que cuando creemos que no podemos escucharlo es porque no queremos.
So you have to do is have a sincere desire to hear Jesus, and you will hear him. It's the only way it can be.
Todo lo que requieres hacer es tener un deseo sincero de escucharlo. Es todo lo que se requiere.
So the play in consciousness is to pretend like Jesus is listening to Jesus is not a very good thing.
El juego de la conciencia pretende convencernos de que escuchar a Jesús no es una buena idea.
And we have to catch that little play and see that that's how consciousness plays to dive deeper in the dream bubble rather than to step out of the dream bubble.
Y tenemos que detectar que este es el juego de la conciencia para profundizar más en el sueño en vez de salir de él.
The light of divine being is here and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it.
La luz del ser divino está aquí y no hay absolutamente nada que puedas hacer al respecto.
But you can play in the dream to push the light, push that voice out of awareness.
Pero puedes jugar en el sueño a empujar esa voz fuera de tu conciencia.
So it's helpful to start with any discussion about guidance and ask Jesus, because anyone who's here is following guidance to be here.
Es útil conversar con Jesús sobre la guía porque todos los que estamos aquí podemos hablar con él.
Because there's lots of television shows we could be watching on Thursday night other than having a talk about listening to Jesus.
Porque preferimos ver muchas otras cosas que tener una conversación con Jesús.
That the whole point of A Course in Miracles and Jesus a New Covenant is to say, you can hear that voice.
Porque el asunto en el curso de milagros y en el nuevo convenio es, tú puedes oír mi voz.
So then we start with the infinite light of being because we can, that's what we are first.
Así que primero comenzamos con la luz del ser divino.
And honesty of God, which is Jesus has to tell us what honesty is.
Y con la honestidad de Dios, Jesús tiene que decirnos lo que es la honestidad de Dios.
Because the only honesty is that you are whole, holy, and complete right now.
La única honestidad es que tú eres santo y estás pleno ahora mismo.
Yet if the dream of separation, of feeling less than holy,
si el sentimiento de separación hace sentirnos menos que santos,
the wanting more,
o querer más,
the play of a dream of wanting more than all that is,
el juego del sueño de querer más de lo que ya es,
to keep that dream in play, you have to avoid Jesus's voice like a plague.
Para poder sostener ese juego, vas a evadir la voz de Jesús como una plaga.
The only point he's going to make is that that's your voice, but we don't want to hear it. And that consciousness plays not to hear it.
Y el punto es que esa es nuestra verdadera voz, pero no queremos escucharla. La conciencia no quiere escucharla.
This is the only thing that there's 100% probability of. You know, people like to go to Las Vegas and they like to gamble.
Esta es la única cosa que puede ocurrir con un 100% de probabilidades, como la gente que va a Las Vegas y a jugar
And play the slot machines in Las Vegas.
y juega en las máquinas de tragamonedas en Las Vegas.
And there's only like a 2% or 3% probability that you can win.
Y hay un 2 o 3% de probabilidades de ganar.
There is a 100% probability that you can hear Jesus's voice because you can never be without it.
Hay un 100% de probabilidades de que puedas escuchar la voz de Jesús.
100%.
100%.
Jesus did not say in the Course in Miracles, 99.999% of the time, you're going to hear God's voice speaking to you throughout the day.
Que Jesús no te dice en el curso de milagros, te voy a hablar un 99,9999%, sino yo te hablo durante todo el día.
Okay, so then we have to look at Jesus. Do I relish the experiences of not hearing your voice and trying to block the voice for God?
Le preguntamos a Jesús, ¿disfruta la experiencia de no escuchar tu voz, de bloquear la voz de Dios?
So in a new covenant, Jesus says, it's not that you can't hear my voice, you've got to look at your desire not to hear it.
En Jesús un nuevo convenio dice, no es que no puedas escuchar mi voz, es que tienes que mirar tu deseo de no querer escucharme,
To block it out of awareness.
de bloquearla fuera de la conciencia.
It's really helpful when you see how much it's relished to block that voice.
Es muy útil cuando ves que estás disfrutando bloquear su voz.
So it's a choice in the mind not to hear it and throw out all this chaff, all this noise, not to hear the voice.
Está este deseo en la conciencia de reemplazar esta voz con ruido.
So that's the first thing, is that the relishing of not hearing the voice and throwing out a lot of noise.
Entonces está lo primero, que es el disfrute de no escuchar su voz a través de poner ruidos
And distractions.
y distracciones.
And the more you start talking, you're open to talking to Jesus, you have to lay out the welcome mat for the voice.
Cuando tú estás dispuesto a hablar con Jesús, le das la bienvenida a su voz.
But the play of consciousness, to be so afraid of Jesus or the Holy Spirit or God that it's just a play in consciousness. Just ignore that. You can hear the voice.
Pero el juego de la conciencia tiene tanto miedo de escuchar a Jesús, al Espíritu Santo, a Dios. Simplemente tienes que aprender a ignorarlo.
You know, and he tell me, you're tolerating all that noise.
Él me dijo, tú estás tolerando todo este ruido.
So we've laid out, it's helpful to remember, we laid out the welcome mat to hell and not hearing the voice.
Tenemos que reconocer que estamos dándole la bienvenida al infierno y no escuchamos la voz.
But if you sit down and join with a brother, see, that's why he gave you joining with a brother, so you can hear that voice more clearly.
Pero si te sientas y te unes con un compañero, y por eso él nos da la opción, nos invita a unirnos con un compañero para que sea más sencillo escuchar su voz.
And you'll see it. There's just some beautiful videos now with some of these joining sessions where you can hear the clarity of Jesus's voice just coming through beings.
Y podrás ver, hay varios videos muy hermosos en los que puedes apreciar cómo se expresa la voz de Jesús a través de los seres,
Through the joining.
a través de la unión.
So, and you'll see it, how 1 second someone will be going, no, I just can't hear the voice. And then the next thing, like Anna Maria, that was beautiful. All of a sudden she starts laughing because she could realize she's been hearing that voice all along.
Puede ver que en un segundo una persona está diciendo, yo no puedo escuchar la voz de Jesús, pero al otro se está riendo porque está escuchando. Se me ocurre el ejemplo de Ana María, donde se reía al escuchar su voz.
So there's some fundamental guidance that Jesus is giving in A Course in Miracles. They're just fundamental guidance.
Hay una guía fundamental que Jesús nos está ofreciendo a través de un curso de milagros.
Well, first of all, there's just follow the curriculum that he gives in A Course in Miracles. Follow that and do the lessons for 365 days.
Lo primero es seguir el currículo que Él nos ofrece, hacer las lecciones, las 365 lecciones.
But he gives some pretty strong instructions, like in chapter 30 or throughout A Course in Miracles, ask me, ask me, ask me.
Y nos da fuertes indicaciones en el capítulo 30 y en todo el curso. Nos dice, pregúntame, pregúntame a mí.
And join with your brother. You're going to be clearer when you join with your brother.
Y únete a tu hermano, tú vas a aclararte cuando te unes a tu hermano.
And repeatedly, as often as possible, he's saying, yes, you can ask him, Jesus, if I join, how valuable is joining as often as possible?
Y cuanto más, mejor.
And you see how powerful that is? You'll be joining all the time.
Si ves lo poderoso que es, te vas a unir todo el tiempo.
So then Jesus has come and he's offered some ways for you to hear him more clearly.
Así que Jesús nos ofrece medios para poder escucharlo claramente.
He's offered the Joining in Light worksheet.
Nos ofrece la hoja de trabajo de uniéndonos en la luz.
So that's a reminder to join with him in an instant of light.
Es un recordatorio de unirnos a Él en un instante de luz.
Don't try to figure out what the problem is or why you're upset. Your function is, I am not at peace. Show me Jesus.
No trates de entender o de buscar la razón de tu enojo. Simplemente di, yo no sé, muéstrame Jesús.
So first we can just look at that fundamental guidance and go, okay, Jesus, how am I following that guidance? He's telling me to join.
Lo fundamental es seguir su guía, preguntarle, Jesús, ¿cómo lo hago para seguirte?
He told me to do the lessons.
Te unes, haces las lecciones.
Okay, now he's asking me, he's showing me, here's a worksheet. Every time I'm upset, am I following his instructions given in the worksheet?
Cada vez que estoy molesto, sigo las instrucciones que Él nos ha dado en la hoja de trabajo.
He's giving chapter 20 to look with him directly at all the desires to deny light. Have I accepted that assignment?
Nos está dando el capítulo 20 para mirar todos los deseos que tenemos bajo nivel de conciencia.
So he invites you to join with him, to give joining opportunities to look deeply at the release of desires. That is the function of his curriculum.
Nos invita para que miremos y liberemos los deseos. Esa es la función que nos ofrece a través de su currículo.
So for those who want to go even deeper to see, because the ego likes to do what the ego likes to do.
Para los que quieran profundizar para ver por qué al ego le gusta hacer lo que él quiere hacer.
And then avoid Jesus's guidance like the plague.
Y evadir la guía de Jesús como plaga.
So for those who want to be absolutely clear on guidance, he's sharing this worksheet.
Y para eso, para aquellos que quieren estar completamente seguros de la guía, él ofrece esta hoja de trabajo.
So it's helpful again to look with a mighty companion and where you do not first ask Jesus where you don't want to listen to him. What all the reasons are you don't want to listen to him.
Tú podrás ver las razones por las que no quieres hablar con él.
It's very illuminating.
Es muy,
As many of them means.
es muy iluminador.
That's like one of the first, 10 first questionnaires that we have in the 90-day program is you sit down with your partner and you start asking Jesus to coach you on why you won't talk to him.
Y ese es uno de los primeros cuestionarios que tenemos en el programa de 90 días. Preguntarle a Jesús, ¿por qué no te quiero hablar?
And he will. They'll tell you exactly why you're not talking to him.
Y él te va a decir exactamente por qué no le quieres hablar.
Okay, so that's really helpful. You just have to start a conversation. That's willingness. Okay, Jesus, just tell me. Give me the scoop.
Es simplemente comenzar una conversación, ¿no? Ok, Jesús, dime.
So what Jesus says here in the worksheet, and you can read it because we'll put the links already on the invitation to tonight. So it's on Facebook already. We'll put it in the YouTube description after the session also.
En la hoja de trabajo, el link está en Facebook, ya está disponible. Y después de esta sesión va a quedar en el link de YouTube en la descripción.
So the worksheet is in English and then followed by the Spanish version for anyone who wants to try to follow in Spanish.
La hoja de trabajo está en inglés y está en español para quien quiera.
So Jesus says, avoiding following guidance is merely an attempt to push love out of awareness.
Jesús dice, evadir seguir la guía es un intento de empujar el amor fuera de la conciencia.
And you can see in the play of consciousness is to make, again, avoid guidance like the plague. So we have to be very, very dedicated to God and his kingdom.
Y repetimos que la conciencia quiere expulsar a Jesús fuera de la conciencia.
And remembering we're being dedicated to our kingdom because God's kingdom is our kingdom.
Tenemos que estar dedicados a nuestro reino porque Dios es nuestro reino.
And I could see in the play of consciousness, it avoids seeing that following God and his kingdom is a full-time gig. It's a full-time thing.
Y nos dice que seguir el reino, seguir la guía es una actividad de tiempo completo.
See, that's what the ego doesn't want to hear. It likes to have nights and weekends free. You know what I mean?
Y eso es lo que el ego no quiere escuchar. Quiere tener vacaciones y fin de semana libre.
It likes to take a vacation from Divinity.
Quiere tener vacaciones de la divinidad.
And you'll see that play as you go deeper with Jesus. He'll show it to you how you're splitting. The ego's trying to split out my time, my time.
El ego tiene esta idea de que me están quitando mi tiempo.
And have its little special time, which is dead time.
Quiere tener su tiempo especial, que es el tiempo de la muerte.
Okay. Avoiding guidance is the means used by the ego to maintain a sense of guilt and weakness.
La evasión es la herramienta del ego para mantener la debilidad y la culpa.
So let's just ask him, because we can all hear him, Jesus. So when I don't follow your guidance, I am relishing maintaining a sense of weakness and guilt.
Preguntémosles, Jesús, si no queremos seguir tu guía, ¿estamos defendiendo la culpa y la debilidad?
So not following guidance is the addiction to guilt.
No seguir la guía es estar adicto a la culpa.
So it's good to have a talk with Jesus about how much we like relishing guilt.
Y bueno tener una conversación con Jesús acerca de cuánto disfrutamos la culpa.
All guidance is expression of love. That's all it is.
Su guía es una expresión de amor y eso es todo lo que es.
He says, if you want to truly know the answer to the question, is this guidance, you will know it because guidance is merely an expression of all the love that you are.
Si realmente quieres saber la respuesta a la pregunta, ¿esta es bajo guía? Tú lo sabrás porque la guía es simplemente una expresión de todo el amor que eres.
That's all. He's showing you where you're fighting against divine expression.
Él nos está mostrando dónde peleamos contra la expresión divina.
That's all guidance is. So being really clear on which guidance, it's essential for course students. It is essential.
La guía es esencial para todos los estudiantes del curso.
The ego likes to choose when it's going to follow guidance.
El ego quiere escoger cuándo seguir la guía.
I said, Jesus, do many course teachers follow guidance?
Le pregunté, Jesús, ¿muchos estudiantes, maestros del curso, siguen la guía?
Very few course teachers are actually following guidance.
Muy poquitos maestros siguen la guía.
So it's just about seeing that here's where guidance has to be followed.
What?
Here is where guidance has to be followed. We have to follow.
Aquí está donde la guía tiene que seguirse. Nosotros tenemos que seguirla.
100% of the time.
100% del tiempo.
Because you are infinite light 100% of the time and worthy of following guidance 100% of the time to celebrate all that you are. That's all guidance is showing you, where you celebrate all that you are.
Porque tú eres un ser divino 100% del tiempo y tienes la capacidad de seguir un 100% del tiempo y reconocer a través de esto quién eres.
It is what is most natural to you.
Es lo más natural para ti.
It's to accept that miracles and time and space rearrangements are natural to you.
Es aceptar que los milagros y los reordenamientos del tiempo y el espacio son naturales para ti.
You can ask me, is this the voice for God or the voice to keep the ego?
Puedes preguntarme, ¿es esta la voz de Dios o la voz para mantener el ego?
But again, if you have to be willing to hear it.
Pero nuevamente, tú tienes que estar dispuesto a escucharlo.
You know, Jesus says in the Bible, those willing to hear will hear.
Jesús dice en la Biblia, los que estén dispuestos a oír, oirán.
So we have to open up and say, okay, Jesus, I want to hear you.
Así que tenemos que abrirnos y decir, Jesús, quiero escucharte.
That if you're not hearing him, chances are you don't want to hear what he's going to say. You're afraid to hear what he's going to say. That's how we shut him out.
Pero si no quieres escucharlo es porque simplemente tienes miedo de lo que te va a decir. Por eso estamos cerrando.
That's how consciousness plays not to be clear on guidance.
Por eso la conciencia aparenta ser que la guía parezca no clara.
Because there's such a belief in sacrifice that God's asking us to sacrifice.
Porque está la creencia de que Dios me está pidiendo sacrificios.
To deny following my guidance is the same as denying who you are.
Negar seguir mi guía es lo mismo que negar quién eres.
If you do not want to know the answer to who you are, you will hide the answer about guidance from yourself.
Si no quieres saber la respuesta de quién eres, te ocultarás la respuesta sobre esta guía.
That's an important sentence.
Esta es una oración importante.
So that's why we have to really get honesty of God when we're talking to Jesus and admit, I don't want to hear what he has to say about this.
Por eso tenemos que ser muy honestos, la honestidad de Dios, y reconocer, yo no quiero escuchar lo que Jesús me va a decir.
If anything, the spiritual journey is a discovery that the play of consciousness is dishonest about identity. It's the whole play of consciousness is to be dishonest about identity.
Y este viaje espiritual consiste en reconocer cuán deshonesta es la conciencia en su juego. Es deshonesta en el reconocimiento de la identidad.
So it takes that single-minded focus to see what it's really costing not to follow guidance and say no to that.
Hay que reconocer entonces cuánto nos cuesta no seguir la guía y no reconocer quién somos.
Standing into divine power and going, I can hear Jesus and I'm going to hear Jesus.
Mantenerse en el poder divino y decir, yo puedo escuchar a Jesús y voy a escuchar a Jesús.
He has promised to help me, and so I'm going to hear what he has to say.
Él prometió hablarme, así que voy a escuchar lo que me tiene que decir.
And like he said, you're going to hear him as clear as a bell. You can hear him as clear as a bell, as clear as Helen.
Y como él dijo, tú me puedes escuchar igual de claro que Helen.
The question is two things. You can hear him. Will you follow him? Because that's another thing. There are lots of beings that can talk all about what Jesus says.
Está una cosa, escuchar y otra seguir, porque hay muchos seres que hablan acerca de lo que Jesús dice.
Because it's natural to us to hear Jesus and get the Jesus download.
Porque es natural para nosotros escuchar a Jesús.
The real question, the rubber hits the road, of whether you will follow his guidance out of the dream bubble.
Ahora la pregunta seria es, ¿vas a seguir a Jesús en su guía para salir fuera de la burbuja de sueño?
Ask me so that I can reveal the truth to you.
Pregúntame para que pueda revelarte la verdad.
So the more open we are, the more willingness to join with a brother to see what's true, you will hear that in clearing desires.
Mientras más abiertos estemos a escucharlo y a escuchar la verdad, más vamos a poder liberar los deseos.
I knew that there were times where I could hear him more clearly than others.
Yo sé que hay momentos en que podía escucharlo más claro que en otros.
Yet I also knew that the more of those desires not to hear him that I cleared out, I would be able to hear him with crystal clarity all day long.
Y cuando liberaba los deseos de no escuchar, sentí que lo podía escuchar claramente todo el día.
So we have to, one, open up the welcome mat to hear Jesus's voice. That's first.
Así que lo primero es abrirnos y darle la bienvenida a escuchar a Jesús.
We have to be willing to say yes when he gives us guidance and not pretend like we can't hear it.
Tenemos que estar abiertos cuando Él nos ofrece su guía y no pretender que no podemos escuchar.
And we have to see and be willing to admit that we can hear Jesus regardless if it's a nuclear holocaust, you can still hear him.
Tenemos que reconocer que podemos escuchar a Jesús incluso en medio de un holocausto, una bomba nuclear, lo que sea.
And I have a video where that anybody can see it. And I've talked about this many times, but it was so helpful for me.
Vi un video que podemos ver que fue muy útil para mí.
And it's really, he's telling me it's a denial of the denial of truth, because I had such a bad headache, but I said, no, I'm going to hear Jesus on it. I'm going to talk to Jesus with just this, splitting what the world would call just horrific headache.
Y es una negación de la divinidad, y yo sentía un terrible dolor de cabeza y dije, Jesús, lo voy a escuchar igual.
And that relationship had started to get strong, and where he just said to me, don't tell me you can't hear me.
Y la relación se fortaleció cuando él me dijo, no finjas que no puedas escucharme.
But it's not demanding, but he knew that would make me laugh, because it did, because I knew I could hear him.
No es que esté exigiendo nada, pero sabía que me iba a reír porque yo sabía que podía escucharlo.
He's going to know, which is what, he's really funny, he's going to know it's going to crack you up, because he's going to tell you, you're taking all this too seriously.
Él es divertido y vas a ver cómo lograr que lo escuches, porque nosotros lo estamos tomando muy, muy en serio esto.
Don't take it seriously, take it with conviction. Be convicted that you are going to hear that voice, and you're going to do whatever it takes to hear it, because it's your way out of this hell bubble.
No hay que tomarse esto tan en serio, pero hay que tener convicción en que podemos y que Él nos va a sacar fuera de la burbuja infernal.
Because when you're 100% committed to answering yes to the last unanswered question.
Can you repeat this?
When you're 100% committed to saying yes to the last unanswered question, am I willing to see what I've denied because it's true?
Cuando estemos 100% dispuestos a responder la última pregunta sin responder. Estoy dispuesto a negar, estoy dispuesto a aceptar que negué lo que es verdad.
You will know that he is the way out, and you, like I've said many times, I would just sometimes grab his feet and hold on.
Tú sabrás que él te está diciendo la verdad. Hay muchas veces en que yo me aferré a sus pies.
But that's the key here about hearing that voice, is one, wanting to hear it.
Entonces la llave para escuchar su voz es, uno, querer escucharlo.
Make it be nothing more important than hearing your own voice. That's your voice.
Que nada sea más importante que escuchar esa voz, porque es tu propia voz.
And you have to start saying yes to it so that he can demonstrate to you, so you can be demonstrated to see the power that comes with following that voice.
Tienes que estar dispuesto de manera que te pueda demostrar el poder de su voz.
So he says, here are questions you can ask me in order to help you be clear on guidance.
Aquí hay preguntas que puedes hacerme para ayudarte a ser claro en la guía.
The choice for life over death, and thus to cease to attempt to kill light out of awareness.
La elección de la vida sobre la muerte, y así dejar de intentar matar la luz fuera de la conciencia.
When you join with a partner, you will find that you can hear the answers to these questions more clearly.
Si te unes a un compañero, verás que puedes escuchar las respuestas a estas preguntas más claramente.
So it's helpful joining with a partner that will not go sideways on you, meaning they will be very true to the voice.
Es útil unirte con compañeros que estén dispuestos y a escuchar la voz directamente, que no busquen desviarse a otra cosa.
You know, because consciousness, that's why you need to join with the ones Jesus tells you who to join with.
Y eso esa es la razón por la que tienes que unirte con el compañero que Jesús te diga que te unas.
Because consciousness likes to choose the one that it thinks it's going to tell it what it wants to hear.
Porque la conciencia va a intentar escoger al que te va a decir lo que tú quieres escuchar.
To do its best to avoid guidance.
Hacer lo mejor para evadir la guía.
So the guidance is, you see, we just have to start listening. It's like, Jesus, who do I join with?
Tenemos que empezar a escuchar y preguntarle, Jesús, ¿con quién me uno?
So you start with the light within, the holy instant, infinite light of being.
Así que empieza con la luz interior, el instante santo, la luz infinita del ser.
You start before time begins.
Comienza antes de que el tiempo comience.
And ask me for help being clear about following guidance and to clear any desire not to follow guidances given by me.
Y pídeme ayuda para ser claro en seguir la guía y para aclarar cualquier deseo de no seguir la guía como yo la he dado.
Again, that's the biggest thing why guidance can't be heard is because it wants to be avoided.
Y esta es la cosa. Si no podemos escuchar, es que realmente no queremos escuchar.
You know, and a lot of times it starts, they're like guidance avoidance words.
Muchas veces las primeras palabras son palabras de evasión.
These are the favorite little code words that the ego uses.
Son las palabras, los códigos favoritos del ego.
I'm asking him, can I share some of those? He said, yes. So I'm going to share some of those little code words.
Le estaba preguntando, ¿puedo compartir algunas de estas? Y me dice, sí.
That sounds wonderful, but.
Eso suena maravilloso, pero.
I would love to do that, but.
Me encantaría, pero.
Behind that but is a limiting belief.
Detrás del pero hay una creencia limitante.
It's not willing to look really directly to see what the denial is.
Es no estar dispuesto a ver realmente la negación que está ahí.
Yeah, he's reminding me what he wrote at the end of this worksheet.
Me está recordando lo que escribió al final de esta hoja de trabajo.
This worksheet's really for those that want a strong relationship with Jesus. I'll tell you that much for sure.
Esta hoja es para los que quieran escuchar la voz de Jesús con certeza.
From Jesus. You can be sure that if you do not want to join with a brother to make sure that the guidance is clear, this is the same as not wanting to join with me to hear my voice.
Si no quieres unirte a un hermano para escuchar de que la orientación es clara, es lo mismo que no querer unirte a mí para escuchar mi voz.
This is your voice, the voice for God.
Esta es tu voz, la voz de Dios interior.
This confirms that you want to make decisions on your own and thus fulfill your wish to perceive that you are separate from your Father.
Esto confirma que quieres tomar decisiones por ti mismo y así cumplir tu deseo de percibir que estás separado del Padre.
In admitting this fact, you will see that you are making the choice to deny yourself the kingdom of heaven.
Al admitir este hecho, verás que estás tomando la decisión de negarte a ti mismo el reino de los cielos.
So you can ask Jesus, not following guidance is denying myself the kingdom of heaven.
Así que podemos preguntarle a Jesús, ¿no escuchar tu guía es negarme el reino del cielo?
He's just offering to save time, that's all, for us.
Él nos ofrece ahorrar tiempo, eso es todo.
So sometimes you have to even clear and do a joining in light session even before you're willing to start looking at guidance.
Can you repeat that, please?
Sometimes you have to do a joining in light session just to clear the avoidance of even wanting to talk to Jesus about guidance.
A veces tienes que hacer un círculo de luz solamente para aclarar la evasión de pedir guía.
However, if you really want that deep relationship with Jesus,
pero mientras quieras esta relación profunda con Jesús,
then you'll sit down with this worksheet with a partner and you'll go, okay, Jesus, tell me where I don't want to follow guidance that you're giving me. Tell me some guidance I need to look at that I don't want to look at.
Te sientas con esta hoja de trabajo, le preguntas a Jesús, muéstrame dónde no quiero mirar la guía que me estás dando.
That is being willing to stare at the belly of the beast.
What is that?
That is being willing to look directly at the belly, the underbelly of the dragon beast of the ego.
Eso es estar dispuesto a mirar directamente al monstruo, al ego.
Okay, so I gave you one of them was, I would do that, but, and then there's going to be like a whole list of reasons why I can't do this.
Y te van a salir un montón de razones por las que no puedes hacer esto.
So we have to see the ego code words behind I can't do this is I won't do it.
Tienes que ver los códigos que usa el ego. Cuando él dice no puedo hacer esto, realmente significa no quiero hacer esto.
That's why Jesus says you can do anything I ask.
Por eso Jesús dice, tú puedes hacer lo que yo te pida.
He doesn't say the words, you can do some of the things I ask.
Él no dice, tú puedes hacer algunas cosas de las que yo te pida.
So the ego has this little way of making, soft pedaling and trying to get sideways on guidance.
Y el ego hace este trabajo de intentar irse por la orilla, esquivar.
It loves to use phrases like, well, my guidance is different from your guidance.
Le encanta decir palabras como mi guía es diferente de tu guía.
As soon as there's a my guidance, you're out of guidance.
En cuanto hay un mi guía, estás fuera de ella.
Because guidance is for the totality. It's for the celebration of all that is.
Porque la guía es para la celebración de todo lo que es la totalidad.
But until it's followed a lot, it's not seen because the ego makes guidance acting like God is making us do something we don't want to do.
Pero hasta que no lo reconozcas, creerás que que Dios te está obligando a hacer cosas.
No, Jesus is just telling you specifically, here is the call of your heart. You have called me and I have answered you. Here it is.
No es así. Esto es el llamado de tu propio corazón y tú me llamas para que yo te lo comunique.
He's given you the way to jump on the love wagon.
Está dando la manera de saltar hacia el amor.
And the ego's going, but this, and I can't do it, and all these sort of things. And Jesus, and another famous thing, it'll even use Jesus to say, Jesus is going to be with me all along when I'm doing what I really want to do.
Y otra cosa que dice es que Jesús va a estar conmigo todo este camino aunque yo no lo haga.
Of course he's going to be there, but you won't talk to him because you don't want to follow guidance and you're going to feel guilty because you didn't follow the other guidance. So you can avoid him.
Por supuesto que va a estar contigo, pero te vas a sentir culpable porque estás evadiendo.
See, guidance is to keep you out of miscreation, to keep you pointed up like this.
La guía es salir fuera de la fabricación.
So when you don't fully follow guidance, then see that guilt sneaks underneath, it hangs out down there and it comes up, like I've said, like that game of whack-a-mole. It comes up and you're going to get smacked and you go, what happened?
Cuando no se sigue la guía, se genera esta culpabilidad por debajo sutil y luego aparece en otra forma y surge por ahí y te sorprende.
Yeah, there's this really great scene in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. There's a great scene in the movie Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Hay una gran escena en una película que se llama
Hitchhiker Guide to the Galaxy.
Hitchhiker va hacia la galaxia.
Okay, where they're walking across this field. It's really an amazing movie. And they're stepping on boards and they were just getting smacked, every step they'd get hit by a board. And that's what we're doing all the time when we're not following guidance.
Y ellos están ahí y de repente se topan con un obstáculo. Y eso es lo que nos pasa a nosotros cuando nos seguimos la guía.
You can ask Jesus, do I really like to get smacked by not following guidance? Ask him.
Jesús, a mí me encanta chocar con obstáculos.
So
Pregúntale.
The way it plays is it's sneaky. See, it's very sneaky. So you say no to guidance, but you're guilty, and then the guilt goes underneath, and then it manifests in all kinds of self-punishment and all this other kind of noise.
Entonces, si le decimos no a la guía, la culpa se queda ahí enterrada y aparece en otra situación que nos se expresa como autocastigo o dolor.
It's a tricky little thing. So, okay, so the question number 2 is, Jesus, is there any guidance you have given me that I do not want to hear and want to choose the experience of death more than your guidance? That's right.
Jesús, ¿hay alguna guía que me estés dando y que yo no quiera escuchar y quiera escoger la experiencia de la muerte más que tu guía? ¿Puedes mostrarme dónde estoy escogiendo la muerte sobre la guía?
Now, this is guidance right here, what Christopher's doing. He said yes to this guidance, not even speaking English this well. He just read this sentence right here and just totally followed Jesus and translated. That's following guidance.
Este sigue la guía, dice que yo no hablo mucho inglés y estoy leyendo un texto que está en inglés. Entonces, está en guía.
But the ego is going to go, oh, it's hell. You can't do it. There's no way, blah, blah. It's gonna, did that happen?
Yes. At the beginning.
At the beginning, because the ego's going, what was all the things the ego was saying about it?
You cannot, you don't speak English.
Okay, but he said yes anyway, didn't
Yeah.
you? Even though he had a doubt, but he was willing to step into it. That is the most important thing to see about guidance.
Yeah.
But really, you didn't want to say anything else about it?
Yeah, it's what at the beginning was a resistance. I can't do that. It's impossible to do that. And then was like, like a joy on that. And now it's like learning so much about this feeling of stop doing perfect, like bring myself to the experience and don't worry about anything. That's the experience. I feel like, oh, it's okay, don't worry about anything. Do it. It's beautiful. Yes, it's like take off
A weight?
Yeah.
You dropped
Yeah.
the weight. It was
Yeah.
a big, heavy weight carrying about trying to be perfect or can I do it right? And he just like grabbed it and went with it. And
Yeah.
then you found out Jesus told you everything you needed to know.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. See? But you until you step into it, what else you want to say?
Translate this.
Oh, he's staying in function. Okay.
Que estábamos hablando que me preguntaba cuál era mi experiencia en esto. Y yo le decía que al principio era una resistencia, que decía, no, yo no puedo hacer eso, es imposible, yo no sé hablar inglés, sé muy poquito, muy básico. Entonces después, al decir que sí, fue ya dejar de preocuparme de hacerlo bien, de hacerlo perfecto, no importa nada y me dejo llevar. Y así ha sido hasta ahora, como entregarme a esa sensación y quitarme el peso de hacerlo bien, de hacerlo perfecto, de hacerlo correcto, y entregarme a eso y fluye, y funciona. Es como una liviandad.
And for me, it could have been, because this has come up a couple of times about this saying to someone, oh, and you're just going to be able to translate that. I don't know that they can and they can't, but Jesus says so. So it's for me too. See, I just say what Jesus tells me to say.
Pero a mí también es esto, porque yo simplemente digo lo que Jesús me dice que diga. Yo le dije que lo hiciera porque lo escuché. No sabía yo quién podía hacerlo y quién no, realmente.
So there would have been a time the K character would have gone, oh, that's just, I can't do it, and all the reasons why, and blah, blah. I would have played the little, no, it can't happen, Jesus, tell God how things work.
Porque el personaje de Keiva podría decir perfectamente, no lo va a hacer bien, o sí, puede hacerlo, como empezar a poner condiciones, y finalmente no se trata de eso, se trata de decir lo que escuchas.
So if you really want to get to know Jesus, and you got to see where you're avoiding guidance, and this is a good question to ask him to show you where you're avoiding guidance.
Y esta es una buena pregunta, preguntarle a él que te muestre cuando no estás queriendo seguir la guía.
Can you show me where I'm choosing death over guidance from you?
¿Puedes mostrarme dónde estoy escogiendo la muerte por sobre ti?
That is willingness to look directly.
Esa es la disposición de mirar directamente.
but the rewards of heaven are great.
Pero los regalos del cielo son grandes.
Because he's just going to show you where you're denying yourself as a divine being. That's it.
Porque Él te va a mostrar cuando estás negando que eres un ser divino, eso es todo.
So then let's just say some thought arises in the mind of something you think is a prompt.
Digamos que aparece algo en tu mente que tú piensas que es una indicación.
Or you're not sure if it's a prompt or not. A prompt meaning, is this something you are asking me to do, Jesus?
Y tú no estás seguro si es una indicación suya o no. Entonces tú quieres preguntar, ¿esta es tu indicación, Jesús?
So it's an invitation from Jesus. We're trying to get clarity whether this is an invitation or not from Jesus.
Tiene que estar claro acerca de si esta es una invitación o no de Jesús.
So, and I'm going to probably change this word to invitation. Jesus is accepting this invitation, whatever the idea is or seeming prompt.
Entonces, lo siguiente es, Jesús es aceptar esta invitación.
Is it most helpful for healing the mind?
¿Es lo más útil para la sanación de la mente?
Boy, I don't even know how to talk about how helpful that guidance starts to get to be because you're going to get 1,000 ideas. The ego is an idea generator.
Y no podemos ni mencionar lo útil que es esto, porque el ego va a intentar explicar 1000 ideas al respecto.
So, to answer this question, I mean, and go to Jesus and say, is whatever this idea, is this most helpful? Or can I drop it, Jesus? Let me tell you, the number of times I've asked him that and just been able to just drop stuff. It's fabulous.
Es muy importante porque le podemos decir si esta idea es útil o hay que abandonarla, porque muchas veces es así. Son ideas para abandonar.
Well, what I learned from that is at first when I was talking about things, you didn't want to drop it. It was still, he'd say, okay, you can drop that. And you could just see the play of wanting to hang on to it.
Y las primeras cosas que me acuerdo que me sucedían es que habían cosas que yo no quería soltar. Y él me decía, suéltalo. Y tú ves cómo a veces te quieres aferrar a ello.
So sometimes we think, oh, he's going to tell me, I don't know, fly to Bali or something.
Fly what?
Fly to Bali, Indonesia. Fly to Indonesia next week.
Ya. Por ejemplo, si me dijera, ve a volar en Indonesia.
Which he has done, but it's not always like that, It's he builds you up step by step with these little things.
Y él te va llevando paso a paso con estas cosas.
Now, in my case, he had to send me to Bali first. Then I got to the point where I started realizing, okay, I can ask him everything.
Cuando fui a Bali, me di cuenta de que podía preguntarle acerca de todas las cosas.
Everything. Do I need to think about this Jesus?
Todas las cosas. Por ejemplo, ¿necesito pensar sobre esto, Jesús?
Until he could get me to the point of, is this what is most helpful for healing the mind?
Hasta que él me lleve al punto en que me muestre lo que es más útil para la mente.
But let's just say he's telling you, okay, you're going to go someplace, he sends you on a mission.
Por ejemplo, supongamos que te manda a ir a un lugar, te está mandando a una misión.
Now, ultimately, you can always say no to the mission. We're doing it all the time anyway, subconsciously.
Pero realmente siempre estamos diciéndole que no a sus misiones, lo hacemos inconscientemente.
But at least spend enough time with a brother to see what you're saying no to.
Pero al menos pasa el tiempo suficiente con tu hermano para que reconozcas dónde estás diciendo que no.
And to come into that honesty of God, that self-honesty, so you're not playing in the delusion game.
Para que reconozcas y puedas ser honesto y salirte del juego del engaño.
And that's why he's given this worksheet. So the delusion game, if you really get sincere about asking these questions, it gets very difficult to delude yourself.
Y por eso nos está dando estas preguntas, para que paremos de engañarnos. Escuchar esto y seguir esto hace que sea muy difícil seguir engañándonos.
So Jesus accepting this offer, invitation, whatever idea is coming into the mind, is this most helpful for healing the mind, yes or no?
Jesús, aceptar esta idea es lo mismo que aceptar, ¿es lo más útil para la mente, la sanación de la mente? Por decir, no, esta idea es lo más útil para la sanación de la mente.
Or is saying no to this idea, if I say no, like he tells me to drop it and say no to it, is that most helpful for healing the mind?
O abandonar esta idea, decirle que no, es más útil para la sanación de la mente.
Because we were laughing earlier today about how consciousness loves to have a hot potato, act thoughts like hot potatoes and keep them, even though, oh, out, that's burning me.
Porque al ego le encanta tener como una papa caliente en la mano y decir, oh, me estoy quemando.
Papa caliente. And then we're screaming about the papa caliente. You know, we're yelling about the hot potato. Oh, this really hurts. Oh, it's terrible.
Y después gritamos y decimos, no, es terrible esta papa caliente.
Drop the potato.
Suelta la papa, la patata.
As Muji would say, just drop the potato.
Como diría Muji, suelta la papa.
Okay, so it might not even be valuable, but what happens is consciousness loves that play where an idea comes in and it chases it around, and then we start following these diversions left and right.
Porque la conciencia le encanta estos juegos de desviarse de la guía, mirar para otra parte.
Consciousness is, I mean, Jesus keeps telling us, see how powerful the mind is. It's going to generate the most beautiful, wonderful, sweet-looking scenario to avoid guidance.
Porque el ego va a generar los espacios más hermosos, maravillosos, para evadir la guía.
It's going to give you a little cotton candy coated trail going to the left. It's going to seem so great over here because that's the play that we do to distract ourselves from the direct looking and following.
Y te va a poner dulces de colores muy atractivos para que los sigas y no sigas la guía.
So is saying no to this most helpful for healing the mind?
Entonces podría ser decir no a esto es lo más útil para la sanación de la mente.
See, the ego's going to go, oh, look at this candy-coated trail over here. This is what's being given by God for me. No, there's one question. Is it most helpful for healing the mind?
Pero es que luego va a decir, oh, mira este dulcecito. Esto te lo manda Dios. Es lo más hermoso. Y tienes que decirle, no, eso no es.
Or Jesus, is this a big distraction from healing the mind quickly?
O Jesús, esta es una distracción para sanar la mente.
And you'll be willing to join with a partner and really listen deeply.
O unirte con un compañero y escuchar profundamente.
4, is accepting following this guidance the same as accepting all the love the Father has for me?
¿Es aceptar esta guía lo mismo que aceptar todo el amor que el Padre tiene por mí?
Now, everybody here knows I love that question. I'm so grateful Jesus gave that to me. It makes me happy every time I ask him.
A mí me encanta esta respuesta y me hace feliz cada vez que la pregunto.
You know, it's like, is this Jesus? And you get this little lift. It's like, yes.
Le pregunto, ¿es esto Jesús? Y se genera esta apertura, es como un sí.
And the most stunning, I can't even describe it about that, is that the things that the K character had no idea. He has to know what the things are is for accepting all the love the Father has.
Porque el personaje de Kay no tiene idea. Él es el que sabe qué significa aceptar todo el amor del Padre.
It just helps me know that it's guidance.
Él me hace saber si es guiado.
Or is following this idea or seeming prompt a denial of the love of all the love the Father has for me?
O seguir esta idea es la negación de todo el amor que el Padre tiene para mí.
See, when you want to know that you're the Holy Spirit, that the Holy Spirit dwells within, you will be willing to ask those questions and not whinge once.
Cuando estés dispuesto a reconocer que el Espíritu Santo está en tu interior, vas a querer hacer estas preguntas.
Because you will know that you are accepting all the help that heaven has for you.
Porque sabrás que puedes aceptar el amor que el Padre tiene para ti.
Number 5, is saying no to this invitation, this idea or seeming guidance, an attempt to delay the atonement.
5. Decir no a esta invitación es un intento de retrasar la expiación.
Okay, you know, when you're really willing to hear Jesus on that, it'll be really surprising what you'll hear.
Cuando estés dispuesto a escuchar a Jesús, te va a sorprender lo que escuches.
Or saying no to this idea or saying yes to the atonement.
O decir no a esta idea, es decir sí a la expiación.
Because you'll get really, really clear. You see that all your happiness lies on following.
Y lo verás muy claro que toda la felicidad radica en seguir su guía.
Is following this, whatever the idea is, avoidance of light or an attempt to deny the atonement?
Es seguir su guía. Seguir, ¿es una negación de la expiación o una aceptación de la luz?
Or is this acceptance of light?
O aceptación de la luz.
So really just one of these questions is, once you get used, you can pick which one you really like and work with Jesus on. Once you get used to asking these questions and getting the answers in your heart and feeling that little love cuddle.
Puedes escoger cualquiera de estas y preguntarle a Jesús para que sientas su respuesta y su abrazo amoroso.
It's really, really helpful. For here it's been.
Muy, muy útil.
Because, you know, I guess for here, when someone says, okay, it's this soft, still voice, and this is how you tell what it is, that doesn't matter if there's so many desires not to hear it. Do you see? You can, because you don't want to hear a soft soul. You don't care anything about it. The play is to do everything but hear that voice.
Porque hay muchos deseos en la conciencia tratando de evitar seguir la guía.
So the willingness to come together and hear it through a brother is very precious.
Así que la disposición de unirse a un compañero es muy valiosa.
You know, it's really to see where we want to avoid guidance. It's really helpful.
Es muy útil reconocer dónde queremos negar la guía.
And that's really, you can just tell if you don't want to join with a brother on the guidance.
Así que podemos ver que si no queremos unirnos a un hermano para aclarar la guía,
A lot of times that's a signal that you really you want to make a decision by yourself.
muchas veces es una señal de que quieres tomar una decisión por tu cuenta.
Jesus, am I willing to join with a brother to be clear on this guidance, or do I want to avoid joining with a brother to be clear on guidance?
Jesús, ¿estoy dispuesto a unirme a un hermano para ser claro en esta guía o quiero evitar unirme a un hermano para tener clara la orientación?
8, what objections are arising around what I am hearing?
8. ¿Qué objeciones están surgiendo alrededor de lo que estoy escuchando?
So there's a lot of spiritual maturity in this right here with this number 8.
Se requiere entrenamiento espiritual en esta pregunta.
And that is, instead of avoiding the guidance, you turn into it to see where the objection is to it.
Y en vez de evadir la guía, miras cuál es la objeción que tú estás poniendo.
To really look at where the but is arising.
Estar dispuesto a mirar dónde surge el pero.
You know, I would do this, but.
Como que yo voy a hacer esto, pero.
Jesus, is it helpful to look more deeply and release any objections to this guidance?
Jesús, ¿es útil mirar más profundamente y liberar cualquier objeción a esta guía?
See, and that's where you can really, to really start seeing that love is here now, infinite love is here now.
Y ahí empiezas a ver realmente que el amor está aquí ahora.
So all these things are just showing us where we're trying to say, you know, all the objections to infinite love being here now.
Y estas cosas nos muestran las objeciones que le estamos poniendo al amor ahora.
And then just spend time with Jesus, go, okay, you can still, okay, I'm not going to do the guidance. You just put that on the shelf for a moment, like Jesus is, whatever he's sending you to do.
Y tú puedes decir, ok, no voy a aceptar escuchar esta guía por el momento, lo voy a guardar por debajo.
Just put that on the shelf for a minute and go, but let me look at with him at any objections to what I just heard, and I believe he's suggesting that I do.
Pero lo puedes poner bajo la cama, la mesa y decir, ya, pero muéstrame las objeciones que estoy poniéndole a esto.
And also to be really clear on the guidance, he's reminding me how the ego plays when it comes to guidance.
Y él me está recordando cómo el ego juega cuando nos acercamos a la guía.
So guidance comes up, and he's reminding me about when I was in Bali.
Él me estaba recordando cuando estaba en Bali.
And I think it's a funny story because as I've said many times, I'm looking at an island and he's saying, okay, you're going to go to that island over there.
Y él me estaba diciendo que fuera a una isla que está ahí.
And I saw the dive flags. Now this is only like 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And they're the dive flags for scuba diving all around that island.
Y veía las banderas de scuba. It's like this thing, do you go swim? ¿Cómo se llama? Scuba. Nadando, como nadar por debajo del agua.
You know, and you know, this is all fine and good going to the island, Jesus, but I am not going scuba diving.
Yo le decía, no, Jesús, yo no voy a hacer esto.
I have to laugh because a number of times I've said, you know, please, Jesus, anything but that, you know, like riding motorcycles, riding buses. You can see that we know where the fear in the mind is. See, and he's going to bring us to that experience to see there's nothing to fear.
Yo le decía, Jesús, todo menos eso. Yo no quiero eso. Y él te muestra la experiencia para que tú puedas trascender el miedo. Es el bucear. Eso es.
Be that as it may, I don't know how to translate that, but okay. So here's the situation we're in. So I'm in Bali. I'm on, I think it's Nusa Penida was the island. And I wake up in the morning and it's like this, I'm going scuba diving.
Estaba en Bali y desperté por la mañana y dije, ya, voy a bucear.
And then the ego tacked on, I'm asking you, it was a little ego extra. It's called an ego torture, self-torture thing. Okay?
Le pareció el ego autotorturador.
It added to scuba diving, it added where exactly the greatest fear was, which would be a decompression dive.
Y empezó a mostrarme las ideas de miedo al respecto de este bucear.
You know, that's where you have to go, you go really deep and then you have to, now I could probably do it, you know, but I've never done it before, but you know, you get so willing. But anyway, what you do is you hold on to a rope. You know, you have to hold on and you have to be at each level for so many minutes because if you rise too fast, you can get an embolism, a bubble, air bubble in your lungs.
Y tenía que hacer este proceso afirmándome y subiendo gradualmente una cantidad de metros porque se pueden generar burbujas de aire.
It's so good to look at this without a twitch, you know, not one twitch about it. I'm like, okay, Jesus, decompression dive. All right, I'm going. See, he completely brings you all the way around.
Y es muy útil ver estas cosas sin el twitch, porque simplemente tú dices, okay, Jesús, ya.
But at that time, you know, it was a little ego tack on extra, but I said no. See, I said no to it. Okay, I'm just going to I'm doing it.
Porque en ese tiempo me apareció el conflicto y tenía ganas de decir que no, pero finalmente dije ya, lo voy a hacer, Jesús.
And as I've said, you know, so many times people talk about, I got to be inspired by spirit. You know, I got to feel the inspiration in it. There was no inspiration in that whatsoever. The ego's not going to be inspired to follow spirit. Okay? That's just
Porque mucha gente dice, no, yo tengo que sentirme inspirado para hacer esto. Pero no hay inspiración a veces en estas cosas y luego no encuentra inspiración.
So first of all, I had to say no to all that extra and just go, no, I'm doing it. You know, I'm going with this prompt because you know, after a while, you know it's a prompt.
Y yo dije que sí a esta guía porque tú sabes que es una guía y tienes que hacerlo.
Before we really have that kind of level of training with him, now you can join with a brother and the brother, you'll hear it through brothers can hear, yeah, you're going diving, but I don't hear all that extra stuff like the decompression part.
Por eso ahora es útil que te unas con tu hermano porque van a poder escuchar más directamente sin todas las historias que cuenta el ego de miedo.
And it's such a reminder, we have to say yes to the prompt and follow it. And then you get to see like it was, you know, beyond anything I could ever describe as far as a dive was concerned.
Y tienes que decir que sí a la guía y vas a ver que finalmente era para ti.
He literally just took care of the whole thing. I didn't even know where the boat was going.
Y me olvidé, literalmente me olvidé de todo, ni siquiera sabía dónde estaba el bote.
But we have to step into it, and to get it's helpful to get clear on the guidance when things like that come up at first, when the ego is going to tack on something horrible and tell you you're going to die, and if you do this, it's always going to do that. That's how consciousness plays. Anything having to do with spirit, it's got a protest sign in its back pocket that it pulls out.
Y por eso es útil aclarar la guía, porque el ego te va a decir, te va a traer miedo, te va a decir, no, te puedes morir, te puede pasar esto y esto. Entonces, esta es la utilidad para evitar eso.
This is just to show you that you are valuable. You're valued by God. That's all guidance will show you.
Y esto es lo valioso, reconocer que tú eres valioso, tal como eres, como Dios te creó. De eso se trata esto.
So it's really helpful to join if you're uncertain or something seems to come to mind and you feel upset over it. So he gives you clarity, because the ego just constantly throws out terror activities.
Por eso es esencial unirte para que puedas escuchar y seguir cuando tienes la duda acerca de si que lo que escuchas está guiado, porque el ego intenta asustarte con estas cosas.
Because he's reminding me about this time, like I woke up in the morning, it was like I could hear this voice going, you have to leave John. Now John was my boyfriend at the time.
Porque yo una vez, por ejemplo, desperté en la mañana y escuché, tienes que dejar a John. Ese era mi novio en un momento.
Jesus, not John. I went into this whole big kerfuffle over that.
Y yo dije, no, Jesús, John, no, por favor. Y tenía toda esta historia y este conflicto interno.
Okay. So now I can talk to him and go, was that guidance? No.
Y ahora le puedo preguntar a Jesús, ¿eso era guía? Y dice, no.
No, he wouldn't ask me to. So it's so helpful to be clear, because consciousness just generates a bunch of garbage.
Es muy difícil preguntar porque la conciencia está generando un montón de basura.
So even if you don't think you're going to follow the guidance, just join and clear the objections to her. Get clear if it's really what he's saying to you.
Simplemente únete para aclarar las objeciones, para que sea más claro lo que te está diciendo Jesús, o no.
And if it's everything he says, really, because everything that he says in Course in Miracles is experience. You'll see that's your experience of guidance too.
Y esta es la experiencia de todo lo que él dice en un curso de milagros.
It's for you all the time. He's always there. It's practical.
Él está ahí siempre para ti y es práctico.
You can't negotiate through this world better than he's going to be able to do. That's for darn sure.
No puedes negociar con este mundo. Él sabe lo que hay que hacer.
But he's reminded me, and we want to tell him what kind of guidance we want. We want to tell him, okay, we've already decided about something, and then we want Jesus to help us.
Él me recuerda que nosotros queremos decirle a él cómo tiene que ser la guía. Queremos decidir primero qué hacer y después preguntarle.
Whatever it is, I've already decided, Jesus, that I need to have surgery to fix my nose. Will you help me?
Por ejemplo, quiero arreglarme la nariz. Jesús, ¿me puedes ayudar?
And then the first place, it's not even in guidance to have your nose fixed. You see, that's how consciousness plays.
En primera instancia, ni siquiera es guiar que te arregles la nariz. Y eso es el juego de la conciencia.
So it's good to back up when you're doing something before you asking Jesus to help you with it, to make sure it's guidance. Is that guidance?
Antes que nada es útil volver con Jesús y preguntarle, ¿es esto guiado?
Because he's just trying to help us stay out of miscreation, out of the guilt factory.
Porque él nos quiere sacar de la fabricación, de esta fábrica de culpa.
And that's really the thing. We're here to help each other, and for everyone to bring their gifts of what they want help with from Jesus. He's here to help us 24/7.
Y de eso se trata, de ayudarnos unos a otros, de escucharle a él para que nos ayude 24/7.
I mean, I can't even, like, the level of help of just learning, instead of letting the ego take over whenever I'd wake up, or, or something, just immediately go to Jesus. You become so trained to go to Jesus.
Y esto se trata de entrenarse con Jesús apenas abras los ojos, apenas despiertes, en vez de tener el hábito de escuchar al ego.
You know, because you know, some at night you'd wake up and you'd be on broil or something. You know, I just start thinking about whatever the horrors of the day, or oh, what do I have to deal with tomorrow? But then your mind becomes so focused on Jesus, you're just going, instead of indulging in all that stuff, you're going, okay, what do I need to see Jesus like?
Porque a veces la mente está en la noche, por ejemplo, pensando en lo terrible que fue el día o en los planes del siguiente día. Y es interrumpir eso y preguntarle, Jesús, ¿qué es lo útil? ¿Qué es lo que tengo que ver? Y así ir generando este entrenamiento.
It's like, okay, Jesus, well, what about this? Show me this and show me that. And what can I look at this? Is this? It's like that.
Como decirle, ok, Jesús, muéstrame esto, qué tengo que pensar, cómo tengo que ver esto.
You know, your eye barely cracks open, or you're just sitting there. As I've said, sometimes I'm just noticing that I'm just talking to Jesus. There's just like a conversation, asking him about what about. It becomes just so natural to talk to him all the time about things.
Yo a veces estoy hablando con él, conversando, preguntándole, y es tan natural, se vuelve tan natural.
You know, and then you laugh. As I say, I start laughing. I say, Jesus, can I go get a Coke? And he says, no. And then I just laugh, you know, because I know he knows what's best for me.
Y te ríes, finalmente te ríes porque, por ejemplo, le preguntas, Jesús, ¿puedo ir a él? ¿Hago esto? Y te dice, no. Y te ríes porque sabes que él conoce lo que es mejor para ti.
But he builds that relationship with us one step at a time.
Y él conoce, él sabe cómo forjar esta relación con él, paso a paso.
But you have to be so clear on guidance. I mean, it's so fundamental.
Pero tienes que estar claro con respecto a la guía y eso es fundamental.
You know, guidance is your guarantee that you are happiness itself. It's the guarantee. It's God's guarantee.
La guía es la garantía de que tú puedes ser feliz.
That you are the totality of what is as God made you.
De que tú eres la totalidad y eres tal como Dios te creó.
So to be so true to guidance, to be true to guidance is to be true to ourselves as infinite beings.
Ser honesto con la guía es ser honesto con nosotros mismos, como seres divinos.
See, it's cutting that cord, the cord of denial, the cord of wanting to dive into the dream.
Es de tener ese impulso de sumergirse en el sueño.
He has to help us undo we love doing so much, and doing is keeping the dream, the death in the mind.
Nosotros nos encanta hacer. Sin embargo, hacer es como el símbolo de mantenernos aferrados al sueño.
So this is the uncoupling and the deconstruction of the belief that choice is real.
Esta es la deconstrucción de la creencia de que la elección es real.
That's why he takes choice and he goes, Jesus, you decide for me. You decide for me.
Tomamos la elección y decimos, Jesús, tú decide por mí.
And then now he's just giving a really at least it's been so helpful for me.
Y ahora nos está dando esta guía que ha sido muy útil, al menos para mí.
To have these questions where I couldn't be dishonest with myself anymore.
Para poder dejar de ser deshonesta conmigo.
You know, to keep me in honesty of God all the time. Really self-honesty.
Para mantenerme en la honestidad de Dios.
You know, in alignment with God's will.
Y alinearme con la voluntad de Dios.
Like we were talking about what's God's will for perfect happiness. What is that?
Estamos hablando también de... Can you repeat, please?
What is God's will for perfect happiness?
¿Cuál es la voluntad de Dios para la perfecta felicidad?
You.
¿Eres tú?
Period.
Punto.
See, as I said the other day, I always thought God's will, well, he wills that God's will be done, whatever it is, you know, I will march into hell for a heavenly cause, whatever, you know, there was just an idea that you had to do something, and doing that thing was God's will.
Tenemos la resistencia de hacer las cosas y de hacerlas, de hacer la voluntad de Dios.
Okay, Jesus, was I holding on to that concept to deny myself the kingdom of heaven?
¿Qué, Jesús? ¿Me estoy aferrando a este concepto para negar el reino del cielo?
God's not trying to make us do anything. God's trying to show us if being has nothing to do with doing.
Dios no nos quiere obligar a hacer cosas, nos quiere mostrar que realmente no somos el que hace las cosas.
You are, I mean, the will of happiness is God's will. That's all that God wills is happiness. He doesn't have an agenda for extra other things.
La voluntad de Dios es la felicidad, no tiene una agenda de cosas que hacer.
And his will being happiness is you.
Y su voluntad de felicidad eres tú.
You know, so he's got to help us uncouple from this idea that doing something is getting happiness. So no, you are happiness. That's all there is.
Y nos va a liberar de esta idea de hacer cosas para obtener la felicidad. Es el reconocimiento de que tú eres la felicidad.
So every time we fight guidance, we're fighting not to see that we are happiness itself.
Cada vez que no queremos seguir la guía, es como la negación de que somos la felicidad por nosotros mismos.
So thank you, Jesus, for this worksheet. Thank you for any mighties that want to join to get clarity on guidance.
Así que gracias, Jesús, por esta guía y a todos los compañeros poderosos por unirse.
That is what joining expresses for.
Esa es la expresión de la unión. Para eso es.
Okay, it's coming together with the joint brothers to be dedicated to following guidance and only that.
Es unirse con los compañeros que están comprometidos a seguir.
To see that we are already the will of the Father. God doesn't have a will in the future. God's going to will me to do something I don't want to do. No, happiness, that's period. That's will of God is happiness. That's the same.
Pero aceptar que nosotros ya somos la voluntad de Dios, de que la voluntad de Dios no es algo que haya que hacer en el futuro, que ya somos
Yes,
esa
Jesus.
felicidad.
Jesus, does God have any other will than happiness? We're so used to free will.
Preguntémosle a Jesús, ¿hay otra voluntad que la felicidad?
Jesus, have I confused hell will with God's will?
¿He confundido la voluntad del infierno con la voluntad de Dios?
God has one thing on his mind.
That is what?
He has one thing on his mind. God has one thing on his mind.
Dios tiene una cosa en su mente.
Happiness, that's it. He doesn't have extra or
Felicidad. Eso es todo.
his celebration of all that is. That's it.
Es la celebración de todo lo que es. Eso es todo.
Celebrate, dance to the music. That's it. Continual, not stop, giving and receiving is one.
Celebrar, danzar, ser feliz, dar como uno solo, dar y recibir. Eso es.
But the way is so clear, guidance.
Y el camino es muy claro.
So thank you, Jesus, for taking us through guidance.
Así que muchas gracias, Jesús, por traernos la verdadera guía.
We love you all. Thank you,
Los
mighties.
amamos mucho. Gracias, compañeros poderosos.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.